Ifeanyi's world was unraveling. Each day, he felt the market's invisible chains tightening around him, pulling him deeper into an abyss from which there seemed no escape. His body bore the brunt of this unseen torment. His once vibrant skin now sagged, marred by wrinkles that spoke of decades he hadn't lived.
Hey there, and welcome to Freezy Stories. Get ready for another amazing story that will keep you hooked from start to finish. If you love great storytelling, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. And if you enjoy this video, show us some love by liking, commenting, and sharing. It really helps our channel grow. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Ifeanyi's world was unraveling. Each day, he felt the market's invisible chains tightening around him, pulling him deeper into an abyss from which there seemed no escape. His body bore the brunt of this unseen torment. His once vibrant skin now sagged, marred by wrinkles that spoke of decades he hadn't lived. Hair, once thick and lustrous, thinned and grayed at an alarming rate. Every glance in the mirror confronted him with a visage that wasn't his own, a cruel mockery of accelerated aging. But the physical decay was only the beginning. His nights were plagued by hallucinations, eerie figures from the market haunting his every moment of rest. Shadows danced on the periphery of his vision, and whispers filled the silence, eroding the boundaries between reality and nightmare. Sleep became a distant memory, and with its absence came a descent into madness. The effects of sleep deprivation, confusion, memory lapses, and aching muscles manifested with a vengeance, further blurring the lines of his sanity. As Ifeanyi grappled with his deteriorating state, the market's malevolence took a more tangible form. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a chilling presence made itself known. A knock echoed through his apartment, a sound so ordinary, yet it sent shivers down his spine. Hesitant, he approached the door and peered through the peephole. There stood a figure draped in a dark, tattered cloak, face obscured by a hood. The air around them seemed to warp, shadows bending unnaturally, as if recoiling from the entity's very existence. Ifeanyi's heart raced. He didn't need an introduction to know who or what this was. The Collector, the market's enforcer, a harbinger of doom for those who dared defy their contracts. Swallowing his fear, Ifeanyi opened the door a crack. "What do you want?" he demanded, though his voice betrayed his terror. The Collector's voice was a raspy whisper, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. "You have something that belongs to the market," it hissed. "Attempts to escape are futile. Fulfill your end, or face consequences beyond your comprehension." Before Ifeanyi could respond, the figure vanished, leaving behind an oppressive silence and a lingering sense of dread. The Collector's visit marked a turning point. The market's grip tightened further, accelerating the curse's progression. Ifeanyi's physical ailments intensified. His bones ached with every movement, muscles weakened, and his vision blurred. The rapid aging mirrored symptoms of rare disorders like Werner syndrome, where individuals experience premature aging, including graying hair, wrinkled skin, and cataracts. Mentally, the hallucinations grew more vivid and intrusive. Faces of merchants leered at him from dark corners, and spectral hands reached out in his peripheral vision. The boundary between the waking world and nightmare dissolved, plunging him into a constant state of paranoia. Sleep deprivation exacerbated his torment. The lack of rest led to heightened irritability, impaired judgment, and even more pronounced hallucinations. His mind, once sharp and analytical, now betrayed him at every turn. Cornered by the relentless assault on his body and mind, Ifeanyi's desperation reached its zenith. The market had made its move, reminding him of the futility of resistance. Yet within this crucible of suffering, a steely resolve began to form. Ifeanyi realized that passivity would lead only to a slow, agonizing demise. If he were to reclaim his life, he needed to confront the malevolent force head-on. Drawing upon the fragments of his remaining strength, he delved deeper into the market's mysteries, seeking any advantage, any weakness he could exploit. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, fraught with peril. But Ifeanyi had nothing left to lose. Ifeanyi's world was collapsing around him. His body, once robust, now betrayed him with each passing day. The relentless grip of the market's curse had aged him beyond recognition, and the haunting visions of its enforcers left him in a perpetual state of dread. Yet, amidst this despair, a singular thought began to crystallize in his mind. Contracts, no matter how ironclad, often contain loopholes. Drawing from tales of supernatural pacts, Ifeanyi recalled that such agreements required the willing consent of both parties. This realization ignited a spark of hope. If he could identify a flaw in his contract, perhaps an element that undermined his genuine consent, he might find a way to reclaim his stolen years. In his quest for understanding, Ifeanyi delved into local folklore, seeking parallels to his predicament. One story stood out: the tale of Madame Koi, a vengeful spirit of a former teacher known for her distinctive red heels. According to legend, her unjust death led her to haunt schools, her presence signaled by the eerie koi sound of her footsteps. This story resonated with Ifeanyi. Madame Koikoi's transformation into a malevolent entity stemmed from a breach of natural justice, suggesting that wrongful actions, even in supernatural contexts, could lead to unintended consequences. Perhaps, Ifeanyi mused, his own contract contained such an injustice, a loophole he could exploit. Determined to uncover this potential flaw, Ifeanyi knew he had to confront the market's enigmatic leader, Madame Ori. Her very name, Ori, held deep significance in Yoruba culture, representing one's inner essence or destiny. Facing her would be perilous, but it was a risk he was willing to take. Summoning every ounce of courage, Ifeanyi prepared for his descent back into the market's shadowy realm. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but the possibility of redemption fueled his resolve. Ifeanyi's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the entrance to the underground market. The dim alley reeked of damp earth and decaying wood, a scent that now triggered an instinctive dread in him. He adjusted the tattered hoodie Baba Ojo had given him, hoping the disguise would keep him hidden from the market's enforcers. "This is madness," Baba Ojo muttered beside him, eyes darting around in paranoia. The old man's usual air of wisdom had been replaced by unease. "If they catch you, they'll do worse than just take your years. They'll erase you entirely." Ifeanyi swallowed hard. He had no choice. His body had grown weaker, the signs of his dwindling lifespan becoming impossible to ignore. The market had cheated him, but he wasn't going to die without a fight. "Just get me in," he said through gritted teeth. "I'll handle the rest." Baba Ojo sighed and pressed a small vial into Ifeanyi's palm. The liquid inside shimmered an eerie shade of silver. "Drink this before you enter. It'll mask your presence for a short while, but the effect won't last forever." Ifeanyi uncorked the vial and downed the liquid in one gulp. It was cold, like ice spreading through his veins, numbing him from the inside out. His pulse slowed. His breathing became shallow. Even the sound of his own heartbeat seemed distant. "Go," Baba Ojo whispered urgently. "And whatever happens, do not—" But Ifeanyi never heard the rest. The shadows pulled him in. The market was just as he remembered. Bustling, chaotic, and utterly unnatural. Merchants with hollow eyes and elongated fingers peddled their wares beneath flickering lanterns. A man with no mouth weighed a set of golden scales, nodding approvingly as a trembling customer offered up a lock of their own hair, no doubt a payment for something sinister. Ifeanyi forced himself to move through the crowd, keeping his head down. He had only one goal: find a way out of the contract. As he passed a group of whispering merchants, their conversation made him stop in his tracks. "You heard? Madame Ori is furious. Someone's been trying to break a contract." "Impossible. The moment the ink dries, it's over. No one escapes the market." "Maybe, but there's always the transfer clause." Ifeanyi's blood ran cold. Transfer clause? He held his breath, listening. The right conditions have to be met. A contract can be given to another, but only if the new holder accepts it willingly. Ifeanyi nearly gasped. A loophole, a way out. But who would take his contract? His mind reeled. There had to be a way. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted someone familiar. Kelechi, his best friend, the man who had betrayed him. And just like that, an idea formed in his mind. Ifeanyi's pulse raced as he followed Kelechi through the winding paths of the market. The dim lanterns flickered, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. He moved carefully, his weakened body protesting with every step, but he gritted his teeth. This was his last chance. Kelechi strolled through the market like he belonged there, his movements confident, at ease, the way a man who has betrayed his best friend would walk when he thinks he's untouchable. Ifeanyi's fists clenched at the thought, but he forced himself to stay calm. The transfer clause was his way out, but it required Kelechi's consent. So he would have to make Kelechi give it. Ifeanyi waited until Kelechi paused at a merchant's stall, examining an array of golden trinkets. That's when he made his move. "Kelechi," he said coldly. His so-called best friend turned, his eyes widened in shock. "Ifeanyi." For a moment, Kelechi looked genuinely unsettled. Then, as if remembering himself, he smirked. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." Ifeanyi stepped closer. "You sold me to the market?" His voice was even, controlled. Kelechi gave a slow, lazy shrug. "I did what I had to do. It was either you or me." Ifeanyi's nails dug into his palms. The audacity! Kelechi leaned in, lowering his voice. "You were always struggling, always failing. I gave you everything you wanted, Ifeanyi. A promotion, money, your mother's health? And now you're mad because you had to pay the price." Ifeanyi exhaled slowly, forcing himself not to react. "You're right," he said. "I was ungrateful. I should have realized how generous you were." Kelechi blinked, confused by the sudden shift. Ifeanyi smiled. The bait was set. "Let me buy you a drink," he continued smoothly, gesturing toward a nearby stall. "One last toast to your generosity." Kelechi hesitated, but his ego won out. He followed. The stall owner, an ancient woman with clouded eyes, placed 2 glasses of dark liquid before them. "A drink to seal fate," she murmured. Kelechi raised an eyebrow, but took his glass without question. Ifeanyi did the same, lifting it in a mock toast. "To new beginnings," Ifeanyi said. "To old friends," Kelechi replied. He downed the drink in one gulp, and that was his mistake. The moment the liquid touched his lips, the contract's magic surged to life. Runes ignited on the table, glowing a deep crimson. Kelechi coughed, eyes widening in horror. What? What did you do?" Ifeanyi leaned forward, his voice a whisper of cold triumph. "I played by the market's rules.
Kelechi clutched his chest as invisible chains wrapped around him. The merchants surrounding them began to murmur, their interest piqued. "I never agreed to this," Kelechi choked out. Ifeanyi tilted his head. "Didn't you? The contract allows transfers under certain conditions. One of them is willing acceptance." Kelechi's face paled. "The drink." Ifeanyi nodded. "A binding agreement. You drank from the market's cup, and with your own words, you sealed the deal." Kelechi gasped, horror dawning on him. He thrashed as the magic pulled at his very essence. The merchants watched with hungry eyes, sensing the shift in power. Ifeanyi exhaled, feeling something lift from his soul. The weight, the curse, it was leaving him and transferring to Kelechi. A low, inhuman growl echoed through the market. The air turned heavy. The crowd parted as a towering figure approached. The Collector. His hollow eyes locked onto Kelechi. "You have broken the rules," the Collector intoned. Kelechi screamed as his body contorted as the market claimed its new victim. The last thing Ifeanyi saw before turning away was his former friend's desperate, pleading eyes. Then, with a final, echoing wail, Kelechi was gone. The contract was fulfilled. Ifeanyi was free.
Ifeanyi stood frozen as Kelechi's final scream echoed through the underground market. The Collector's skeletal fingers wrapped around Kelechi's writhing form, dragging him toward the swirling black void that had opened beneath the stone floor. The very fabric of the market trembled, shadows flickering wildly, stalls rattling, the air thick with something ancient and angry. He had won, but the market wasn't letting him go so easily. A slow, deliberate clap broke through the suffocating silence. Ifeanyi turned. At the far end of the chamber, seated on a high-backed throne of twisted bones and golden chains, was Madame Ori. For the first time, she rose. Madame Ori had always been imposing, her dark eyes, her ageless beauty, her unsettling calm. But now, as she stood to her full height, something changed. Her skin cracked. Deep fissures spread like lightning across her face, revealing the abyss underneath. Not flesh, but shadows writhing beneath a thin human mask. Her gown of silk rippled unnaturally, as if stitched together from living souls struggling to break free. "You thought you could trick the market." Her voice was not one, but many, a chorus of whispers and screams layered upon one another. The ground beneath Ifeanyi's feet shuddered. A wave of nausea rolled through him as the walls of the market moved, pulsing like a living thing. "Your debt is paid," Madame Ori said, stepping down from her throne. "But the market does not like to be cheated." Ifeanyi swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to run. Baba Ojo had warned him, no one leaves the market unchanged. The shadows twisted around Madame Ori's feet, spreading towards him like ink seeping through cracked stone. The merchants, who had been watching with amusement moments ago, began to step back, whispering nervously. Ifeanyi turned to bolt. A piercing shriek rang through the cavern. The market lurched, its very foundation trembling. Stalls tipped over, their contents spilling onto the stone floor. The lanterns flickered wildly, some shattering and plunging entire corridors into unnatural darkness. The collectors, hulking figures with hollow eyes and jagged smiles, began moving, not toward him, toward everything. The market was feeding. Ifeanyi sprinted, dodging grasping hands and slithering tendrils of shadow. Behind him, the merchants screamed as their stalls were swallowed by the void. Madame Ori's voice echoed, laced with amusement and menace. "You cannot escape, little one." Something huge dropped from the ceiling,
a monstrous, insectoid creature, its glistening mandibles snapping inches from his face. Ifeanyi twisted away just in time, nearly slipping on the uneven stone. He had to get out. Baba Ojo had told him of an emergency exit, a hidden gateway only accessible when the market was in disarray. But it was deep within the ruins of the oldest stalls, and the market was tearing itself apart. Ifeanyi's breath came in ragged gasps. As he pushed his failing body forward, he could feel it. The toll of the contract, the years stolen from him. Every muscle ached, his vision blurred. But he refused to die here. The collectors were closing in. He could hear them laughing, a distorted, inhuman sound that sent ice down his spine. Then, a flicker of light. There, a narrow corridor, barely visible between crumbling walls. The exit. He lunged for it, but Madame Ori was already waiting. She appeared in front of him, shifting out of the darkness as if she had always been there. Her human mask was nearly gone now, her monstrous form fully revealed. "Run, run, little one," she purred, her many voices weaving into his mind. But the market always collects. Ifeanyi was done playing by her rules. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the contract, the original one he had signed. It was nearly blank. The market had taken nearly everything, but not everything. Gritting his teeth, Ifeanyi did the unthinkable. He ripped the contract in half. A deafening howl erupted from Madame Ori's throat. The market screamed in protest. The ground beneath him fractured, and suddenly, he was falling. Darkness. Cold air rushed against his skin. He braced for the impact, but there was none. Instead, Ifeanyi awoke gasping on a rain-soaked street. His body sprawled on the cracked pavement. The sounds of honking cars, distant voices, and life greeted his ears. He was back in the real world. For a long moment, he lay there, chest heaving, his heartbeat an erratic drum. Then, a whisper. Faint, but unmistakable. The market never truly lets go. And just like that, the shadows flickered in the corner of his vision.
Ifeanyi's eyes fluttered open. Blinding white light stabbed through his skull and he groaned, turning his head to the side. His body felt like it had been wrung dry, every muscle aching, his skin clammy with sweat. The steady beep, beep, beep of a heart monitor filled the sterile air around him. A hospital. He was alive. For a brief moment, relief washed over him. The market was gone. He had torn the contract. He had escaped. Then, a whisper. Soft, distant, but there. Ifeanyi's breath hitched. He sat up abruptly, but the movement sent pain lancing through his skull. He gasped, his vision darkening at the edges. As he struggled to focus, the hospital room came into view. A nurse, startled by his sudden movement, rushed to his bedside. "Easy, easy," she soothed. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days? Memories surged. Kelechi's betrayal, Madame Ori's monstrous form, the collapsing market, the endless abyss. Ifeanyi reached for his arm, searching for signs of decay. His skin was smooth, no wrinkles, no unnatural aging. Had it really worked? As he regained his bearings, the nurse explained that he had been found collapsed on a street downtown. No ID, no wallet, just a strange black mark on his wrist. Ifeanyi's heart stopped. Slowly, he lifted his arm. There, just beneath his wrist, was a dark sigil, faint but unmistakable, the same symbol that had been on his contract. The market had branded him. His throat went dry. "Sir?" the nurse asked, noticing his sudden tension. "Are you all right?"
Ifeanyi forced a smile. Yeah, just disoriented. But he wasn't. He knew the truth. The market was not done with him. Over the next few days, he tried to convince himself that it was over. He returned home, his job welcomed him back, his mother, miraculously, was still healthy. His wife, well, that was another matter. The life the market had given him was still intact, and that was the problem. At first, he ignored the little things. The way shadows seemed to linger a second longer than they should. The odd whispers just before he drifted to sleep. The flickering of lights whenever he entered a room. Then, one night, he turned off the bathroom light, and in the mirror's reflection, he saw himself, still staring back. Eyes wide, expression wrong. Ifeanyi froze. The reflection blinked, but he hadn't. He stumbled back, flicking the light back on. His reflection was normal again. His pulse thundered in his ears. Hallucinations? Stress? A remnant of his trauma? But deep down, he knew. The market never truly lets go. Something had followed him, back, and it was waiting.
Days passed, and Ifeanyi tried to convince himself it was over. He returned to work, going through the motions. His boss welcomed him back, none the wiser to the chaos he had endured. His mother's health remained perfect. His wife, Cynthia, still played the role of the doting partner, as if their marriage had never crumbled. It should have been a relief, but it wasn't. The mark on his wrist still burned in the dead of night. The whispers grew louder. Shadows moved just beyond his line of sight. Something was wrong. One evening, Ifeanyi walked home from work, his tie loosened, his head throbbing from exhaustion. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Then a whiff of something metallic filled the air. His stomach twisted. He knew that smell. Blood. Copper. The scent of the market. Heart pounding, he picked up his pace. But as he turned the corner, he froze. There, in the dim glow of a flickering streetlight, stood a figure cloaked in black. A merchant. Not Madame Ari. Not one he recognized. But the same eerie presence. The same soul-piercing stare. The merchant smiled, teeth gleaming unnaturally white. "You look troubled, sir. Perhaps a deal could ease your burdens." Ifeanyi's blood ran cold. He took a step back, breath shallow. "I'm not interested." The merchant chuckled, tipping his head. "Oh, but someone else will be." A shiver crawled down Ifeanyi's spine. He turned, gaze sweeping over the street. Then he saw him. A young man, maybe in his 20s, stood at the alley's edge. His shoulders slumped in defeat, his eyes hollow with desperation. He reminded Ifeanyi of himself, before the market, before the nightmare. The merchant beckoned to the man, and slowly, hesitantly, he stepped forward. Ifeanyi's breath caught in his throat. The cycle was starting again. "No," he whispered. He turned back to the merchant. "You can't!" The figure was gone. Only the young man remained, staring at something invisible, his lips moving in silent agreement. Ifeanyi clenched his fists. He had escaped, but the market never died.
Hey, Freezy Stories family. We're so glad you stopped by to watch. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us grow and keeps us motivated to bring you even more incredible stories. Thank you for being part of our journey. See you in the next one.